Welcome to Boiling Point, the podcast to motivate ever-evolving entrepreneurs and forward-thinking movement pioneers. Our hosts, filmmaker Greg Hemmings and executive coach Dave Vale, are turning up the heat in the world's business communities. Our interviews with entrepreneurs, thought leaders, and movement makers are raising the temperature of inspiration. Live from the hottest studio in this quadrant of the universe, here are Dave and Greg.
Wearing this is awesome.
That's in our house. For people that are just listening and watching, it says wear PJs to support a safer tomorrow. Hestia House PJ Day. So my girls took advantage of that, and Hestia
My
House.
girls in their pajamas too at Sam de Sham today.
Okay, cool. Well, it's a really awesome cause, and it's about helping women get out of domestic situations, and I think it's such a cool thing to be supporting. I'm not wearing my PJs right now, but I'm fully endorsing it. Yeah. So welcome to the pandemic podcast. We're back, zooming.
Separate, Dave.
Separate. It's not as fun. It's not as fun.
We had a good run of a few episodes where we could be in the same room together, and that was lovely. It was nice to see in the flesh.
Yeah, and actually, a former guest, Derek Chason, contacted me, and he asked, would I be interested in speaking to ProKids annual event, and I was kind of surprised that he asked. I was would love to. I know quite a bit. I mean, enough to be dangerous about ProKids. The event it kind of morphed into something else, so they didn't actually need a speaker. But it got me introduced via email to you, Jen, and welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
You were telling us you're like an avid podcast watcher, listener, and she loves our past 5 episodes in particular. Great
so far.
Why don't you introduce yourself and how the whole ProKids angle kind of came together, in terms of us talking to you and promoting ProKids and maybe even talking about not only who you are, but what ProKids is all about as well.
Sure. So I am currently the chair of the advisory committee. So we have it operates different than I guess like a board of directors would be. So we are a committee, and we have representatives from the local municipalities. So we have Quispam, Rossay, Granby, Westfield, and then of course St. John. And then we have community members as well. So I would be considered a community member. I came on board about probably 4.5 years ago, I want to say. I'm in my second term, and we do 3-year terms. So, and I joined by they post the city boards and stuff online. And I was searching one day and I found it and I applied, and I'm lucky I was accepted on. I have a very close relationship and interest between, I guess, poverty and sport. So it married very well for my interests. I grew up in poverty myself, and I share my story often because I would be considered to have broken the cycle of poverty. And when I think back and I look at my story, one of the biggest things for me was recreation opportunities. And specifically, it was field hockey in high school. So now in my life, I find it's really important for me to kind of give back, and especially to continue to share the story about how opportunities are so important for people who are living through poverty. So these are exactly the things that can help people break through that.
Yeah, and we'll just before we leave that, maybe explain to folks that aren't familiar with ProKids what ProKids is all about.
Right. So we are a service for low-income individuals, and it's a threshold too. Like some people just need assistance. Maybe it's once a year, but we provide that financial assistance to those who are in need for their recreational opportunities of their choice. And it's not limited to any. It's not just sports. It's dance lessons, art, horseback riding, you name it. We will help pay for that session for you. And I think we do a few a year, depending on seasons. There's different things. So if there's soccer in the fall, and then there's dance in the winter and stuff, we will do that. So people can apply through us to have the fee and equipment costs, any costs associated with joining an opportunity, we will cover that.
That's awesome. That's really cool. And Jen, I first heard your story on stage at what I think was the United Way event, probably 3 years ago. Does that ring a bell? It was at the Delta.
I have been fortunate to share my story many times. So, like, I know
anywhere. I may have seen it 7,000 or 8,000 times. So, no, just joking. I saw it once. It was incredibly compelling, and I just wanted to ask why you feel it's important to share our stories of struggle, but also of success as well. And it's a very vulnerable experience to get in front of a large audience and tell people where you came from and where you're going.
I think for me, the biggest thing was, I guess, especially like growing up, you wouldn't really know that you are in poverty, or maybe you are at a disadvantage, especially the neighborhood I grew up in. We were all growing up in Crescent Valley. We're all kind of in a similar boat in terms of finances, et cetera. So I had no idea that I would have been disadvantaged. And then when I got to high school, I could see it a little more. So I guess for me, I find it so important to share the story because others around have the ability to help. So if that's financial support, there's ProKids, being in high school and having tutoring available through the Promise Partnership. Like, all of those things are so helpful and beneficial to have wraparound services for people like me who grew up in that. And that is ultimately what led me to break the cycle. And I know that that's exactly what is needed for anyone else who is living in that. So I think that's why it's so important for me to continue to share, to show like people can help. And if it's through our fundraising specifically for ProKids, every dollar goes directly to our youth. So it really is making a difference in the lives. So that's why I like to share my story, and just so people know that it is doing good by helping and supporting these organizations. So yeah, I share it as much as I can, and I'm happy that it does resonate with people, and it continues to make it worthwhile for people to continue to contribute.
I think I love hearing people's stories, especially, naturally a success story like you. And if we strip away, if we just look at sports itself, I think, and Greg and I joke about playing hockey. I played a lot of hockey as a kid. There's a really expensive sport, and it's such a wonderful sport in so many ways, like any sport. But it seems to be one of the most inaccessible sports for some people. And I didn't so I grew up privileged and played hockey, and, was able to go to Saskatchewan and play hockey. And I remember growing up, I grew up in the Yukon Territory, and kind of part of my story that I think maybe connects a little bit. And I have this distinct memory of this one kid that we played with early on, Jeff. I won't use his last name, but Jeff was an exceptional hockey player. Like, he was so good. He was like miles ahead of us. And he was the guy, he was like, wow, if I could be as good as Jeff, right? And then I noticed he started showing up less and less as we got older. And I gathered that in reflecting that, and I met him as an adult, that it was tougher and tougher for him to make it to hockey, was my impression. And I think it was around the socioeconomic status. Like, it was strictly that, right? And I just think, so I kind of come from a different perspective, Jen, where I go, what could have happened for Jeff had he had the same opportunities that I had. And I just feel sad to think that kids don't have these opportunities. So that's why the ProKids resonates with me so much, because, as an adult, I always reflect, and it's been a lifetime ago since I played hockey. Like, in fact, I'm coaching a team right now, and I think the kids go, really, you played junior hockey for real? Like, cause I haven't really played a lot, and it's something you got to keep up. But I mean, in terms of what it gave me that helps me in business, and what, not just in other sports as well. It's just so important. So, for you, when you got that opportunity, were you aware of the opportunity you're getting, or like how did that, in high school and field hockey, like how did that play out for you?
I don't think I knew at the time like what was happening. So I played like our school sports in middle school and stuff. Everyone made the team, everyone was a part of it. And then I went to high school and I thought I was gonna try it for soccer. And there was like 60 to 70 girls who were trying out. Like I didn't have a chance. I didn't even have like proper like equipment, cleats or anything. Like I really did not have a chance. And when I was there, I guess I started to see that. And then my teacher, my English teacher, Carrie Shea, she said, why don't you come out for field hockey? And the rest is history. So I didn't know that I needed it, but that was the thing that I looked forward to every single day. So during the fall, it kept me engaged in school. It caused me to not maybe find other activities that some of the kids that I grew up with maybe were getting involved with. It kind of started to keep me on that path. So field hockey was first, and then that led into other sports. Like I wanted to try it for rugby, like in the other seasons. And then, but every September I knew going into school that I would have field hockey. And I know that made sure that I got there. And then when you're in it, when you're there, it's easier for them, our teachers and stuff for us to be engaged and be a part of something. And that is what continued to drive me each and every year until eventually I graduated and then went on to university. And here I am now.
It's amazing. And as you're telling the story, I also feel like there's a great opportunity in sharing this sort of information with high school teachers and coaches and whatnot, that maybe they wouldn't even think of that, you know what, you got 60 girls coming out to try out, and there's about 8 of them that don't have the cleats on or don't have the pads and all these sort of things. And I wonder if there's a way that could be, addressed first, so that the feeling of inadequacy isn't there, and it is a level playing field, if you will.
I know I've always said, school, just have one position, at least like reserve it or something for someone who wants to try out that. Just give them that opportunity to be involved with that. And I think that the schools do see that, and they do. I know I now coach the field hockey team at St. Max. So I know that I have a special place in my heart for kids who are needing that. And I make sure that we have room for them on our team.
Fantastic. That's awesome.
I think I'm just thinking now that were you a Red Triangle recipient?
Yes,
YMCA?
yeah, there it is.
Was Dave.
Right,
Yeah. Because I was like, this story sounds so familiar. I'm pretty sure I saw a video. So there we go.
Yeah, I did last year. Yeah, not this year. The year before that, I was the recipient. So very fortunate also for receiving that.
Now, do you think, when you talk about and by the way, what a amazing story about breaking a cycle of poverty, and it's something that I can't relate to personally, but I can sure appreciate, kind of as much as I can objectively. To what was it about the access to sports that supported that? Because it's probably more, there's probably multi-variable, that supported breaking the cycle. But what do you find specifically about sport that would have helped?
I think first thing is being a part of something. That was huge for me. Just knowing I had teammates. There was 20 other girls with me, so I was able to build connections with different individuals who would have different backgrounds than I did. So having those connections, being a part of something, and just the skills you learn from being a member of a sport, teamwork, leadership, all of those things directly translated into my schoolwork and so forth. And I think that having that wraparound of being involved in a sport is really, and I mean, any recreational opportunity, not just, specific to sport for me, of course.
Right.
Any of those things, dance, cheerleading, art, like music lessons, I know that's an escape for anyone in that, and everything that you learn from that is all encompassing and can really help push people forward.
Feels like there's so much connection that can happen, and I'm just using sport, but I mean, it could, to your point, could be, there's a lot of other categories. But it's I feel like on so many levels, it's a level playing field. Even as an adult, you go out and play, and I'm just going to use hockey as an example. You play pickup hockey, and man, there's everyone there. There's the guy that the doctor, and then there's the lawyer, and there's the entrepreneur, and the refinery worker, and the teacher, and and everyone's playing, and and it's like it doesn't really matter. Like no one's really like like to me, it seems like class kind of if they have the luxury of being there, but it just seems like if we create that opportunity, then like even if I think back to in the Yukon, the teams we played on, very very diverse actually, racially diverse, and there's not a lot of racial diversity in the Yukon, but my teams tended to be pretty more diverse in their communities in a sense, but you're all playing on the same team. So I just thought I always felt like that was a really, maybe I'm looking through rose-colored glasses, but I always felt that was a real point of connection for everyone.
Yeah, I agree. And I just started playing ice hockey for my first time now. And I feel like I feel like what a young person would feel like coming out again too. But thinking of that, as soon as you have the jersey on, you're the exact same as everyone else. No one else knows the situation when you're in that moment playing that sport. I can remember it back in grade 9 and still to this day, I find it very relevant. So I think exactly what you're saying is very huge for why we play sport and move on.
That reminds me of that super special story back in, I don't know if it was World War II, when the Americans and the Germans were at some battle somewhere, and it was Christmas morning, and they put their guns down. They got up and they played a game of soccer together. You know that story?
Yeah.
No, I don't.
You might be getting the wars mixed up, but I think it was WW2, and it just went down history as this moment of you know what? It's Christmas. We both share the same tradition. We both share the tradition of soccer. Let's just, for this period, put the political divide away and just play. And I'm sure a movie's been made of it. Must have been. But I've never even thought of that as that opportunity to just be in the sport and be your role in the sport. Forget about your background. I think that's a real special experience.
Yeah, I agree.
How do kids so we're for people, not everyone listening to this, like we're making references to southern New Brunswick in Atlantic Canada, yeah, and specific communities, and I'm assuming is ProKids, like is it a local or national, or like what is the scope of it?
So we are local here to St. John and the surrounding area. So we include Grand Bay, Westfield, kind of into Rothesay and Quispam area. But I know that there are some other, I know Moncton has a ProKids, and maybe Fredericton does, like kind of their own versions. And there are like national organizations as well, but I guess we're local in how we operate.
And how do kids, like, so if there were some kids, or there's someone listening to this podcast, mm-hmm, and was aware of someone who, maybe access was a challenge for them for whatever reason, and as you pointed out, it's, maybe it's not technically poverty, but there's, maybe there's a lack of access for whatever reason. Mm-hmm. What's the process? How does this
so it is it is, and it's very easy and simple. We don't add anything too crazy. It's mostly just for documentation, but there is like an application form, and we have it online on our website. It's down right now with everything that's going on, but in the future, that's where we house our application process. And it's just simple. You just fill out your information, your date of birth and address and those things. And then we do like 2 reference checks, and that could be, a teacher, worker, community member, any of those types of things. And we just call and check the reference. And it's a very easy, simple process that we go through. It's application either online or paper. They can mail it at the city building that's on Adelaide Street. They can drop in there. They can call on the phone and talk to our staff member, Jessica. And we make it as easy and accessible as possible for anyone who's needing our service.
What's the URL?
I think it's prokids.ca.
Okay. Well,
check that down. So we should check. It's with the city website as well. It's off of that.
Oh yeah, there's some crazy stuff happening in the city.
Yeah.
Right?
The other important thing to note is, my understanding is local business is participating in the funding of ProKids. Correct me if I'm wrong, but our listening base is a lot of entrepreneurs and business owners. So how are businesses locally participating in ProKids? Because what a great way to give back.
Yeah, and we do an annual fundraiser each year. That normally it's a dinner, so we have a big, and people come back specifically for the dinner. We have it at the Delta, but obviously we couldn't do that this year with everything going on. So we did a virtual fundraising event. But businesses can donate. I mean, individuals, anyone at any time. We have it set up through Canada Helps. You can just search ProKids St. John and we come up there. So we just, and the good thing, the best thing about donating to ProKids is every dollar raised goes directly to the youth. So none of the money that we raise goes to any overhead costs, no staffing, none of that. It goes directly to our youth. So I know that really hits home with a lot of people because it's not paying to keep the lights on. We don't have to continuously fight for that part of it so that we can reach for more and more youth every single year.
Wonderful to know. That's incredible.
We're very lucky. And that's in part by, St. John and our municipalities paying for that part of it, for housing us at our office and for our staff and them contributing to that has made it so that we can have that. So we're very lucky for that.
Fantastic.
Can you think of any, like, just, I know you have your own story, but story like a story that you've heard maybe recently that would be inspiring, that people should want to know? And I mean, and I'm guessing the application, could you apply on behalf of a child that you maybe?
Yep, parents can apply, social workers can apply, teachers can apply. We see that all the time, that sort of thing happening. And one story that I can think of, which is amazing. We have a young girl, she's high school age, and she is all of 90 pounds, and she plays very high level competitive rugby. And we've been able to sponsor her to go play down in the States. She's traveled very far, has been recruited, like highly, highly recruited to play on their teams. And she's just continuing just down that path and she's going to probably play for Team Canada someday.
Wow.
Phenomenal. So and that's just one. We have several stories of people now. Even our vice chair, Jordan Tracy, I know he wouldn't mind me sharing this because he often shares his story, but he's a ProKids alumni. He went through his young ages and in high school playing ice hockey and had ProKids support through that. And now he's a high level businessman as well. So we are fortunate. And that's something that we've been continuously working on because we don't want to, stigmatize anyone or make them feel, but we do ask people to share their stories, and more we are having a lot more people come forward to share that because it is remarkable.
Well, Jen, why don't you, feel free to get some of them to reach out to us because we should get them on the podcast, because I don't think, Dave, we do that often enough, is really dive into people's personal stories on their journey into making impact, so if there's a few of them, just make a connection.
Absolutely.
I think that's
I mean, they're inspiring stories. Well, and what's really inspiring about your story is that the cycle, but to come back and then to actually be in a position to give back the way you are. I mean, that's incredible. Like to think that you were receiving and now you're the giving, you're on the giving side.
I've been very fortunate with many opportunities that have been presented to me, and I've jumped on them. And every time it's the full circle moments. I went back and worked at the school that I grew up in, and then I'm chair of this committee and coaching at St. Max. So I have been very fortunate. We have a great little city here that gives all of those opportunities.
Man, yeah. Well, Jen, thank you so much for coming on, and we're really excited to see where ProKids continues to make impact. This is fantastic, and what's the best way for people to get in touch with you specifically?
They could email me, jen.brown@live.com, if anyone ever wants to hear more, for sure. We have, and for ProKids, right now we're using mostly our Facebook page, just ProKids St. John. You can type that in, and if there's anything that's needed, you can contact us through there.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Jen.
Yeah, thank you. And just keep up the important work you do, and reach out to us if we can be of any assistance at any point, because it's just such a wonderful story, ProKids, and your story in particular.
Thank you, guys.
Awesome. Thanks, Jen.
Have a good weekend.
See ya. And see you later, Dave.
Thanks for checking out this episode of Boiling Point. Remember to rate and subscribe to us on iTunes and follow us on Twitter at Boiling Point Pod. To see more from Dave Vale, check out leadershipunleashed.ca or visioncoachinginc.com. And on Twitter at Dave_Vale. And to catch up with Greg, visit hemmingshouse.com and at Greg Hemmings on Twitter. Thanks for listening, and remember, keep that pot boiling.